But also this weekend was the Major League Baseball draft. And if you follow us on Sox Machine, we've been covering this draft every week since mid-February. We've been posting a lot of video content. More will be coming your way as the MLB draft is finally over. The White Sox had 21 picks in the 20 rounds. And in the end, James Fegan, I spent all this time and we knew back in December it was going to be Roch Cholowsky and Landon Thome. And look what happened. Roch Cholowsky and Landon Thome with the first two picks for the White Sox. You got a chance to chat with Roch, and we heard Roch at the beginning part of this podcast. And it really sounds like until like mid-June when he came to Chicago for the first time, he was still uncertain about the White Sox, but it was that, I guess, recruiting trip, him staying with the White Sox a couple of days, that not only did it convince the White Sox that Roch was the direction, but also convinced Roch that this would be a good spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, we have now demonstrated value of their big week against the Dodgers and Braves that they apparently sold Roch Cholowsky on the organization during the process. Um, he talked about the team atmosphere. Like, I feel like I've been hearing more and more initially organically, and now they all say it and they are self-sustaining, but like they refer to themselves as like a college atmosphere in the clubhouse in terms of kind of the interpersonal connection and certainly like the emphasis on like scrappiness and like these hard-nosed plays and almost to a degree probably their celebrations. They aren't like all like doing helmet taps or anything like that, but it feels like that's not far off from their dugout at this point. So he mentioned liking that. Like I asked him like especially because like he had such a central leadership role on UCLA. Like, is this how you'd want? Is this what you tried to like facilitate? And he seemed to like vibe with that. But for me, my angle was obviously him mentioning like how much he connected with Ryan Fuller, and it was like very like what's it like New York Times wedding page meet cute description. Like it was supposed to be a 45-minute lunch, but then they found themselves talking for hours, sort of thing. But the larger takeaway is that you have, and I think it's unique, and and probably in a moment where we're less inclined to trust what the White Sox are doing, maybe troubling how much you like. I don't. How often do you hear a first overall pick where they're talking about fixing a swing? Both Shirley, repeatedly, not like it wasn't even Fuller the one doing it, but like Getz and Shirley talk about like we really think they're offense components that we can improve. And the part of them being willing to say that so openly, where it's even like kind of known that they're going to be altering his two-strike approach, if not junking it entirely, already, is because they got so much buy-in from him about what plan they presented. And to some degree, like that's the way the wind has been blowing for a while. You need people you bring in the organization to be down with what your player development plan is. It's just feels new for the White Sox to be like one in tune with that, but also like impressing people or getting comments on how they're impressing people with it. So I think obviously time will tell, and we probably had our evaluation. I've certainly heard from other scouts and other teams that liked Emerson more, but at least their process seems more defendable in a way, even if this feels like the draft class like a White Sox front office from 2012 would pick, where it's the
Yeah.
House Hall of Famer's son and the super polished college favorite that everyone said was the number one pick the whole time. It seems like who they would have picked.
Yeah.
Like back in like old baseball prospectus days, we'd like do free agent predictions and then compare it to Randy, the random number generator, which was just an algorithm that picked the team. And Randy usually outperformed us a little bit. I feel like Josh, you could like did all this work and all this like background and have this understanding of the class and like median score collar probably could have like you couldn't outperform them. You could match them maybe, but like there's no like their accuracy with the first two picks, you could not hope to outperform.
Well, I get it was worth it then, Jim, to go to Arlington, to go to Omaha, to go out to the suburbs of Chicago, to stop at Marian Catholic to watch Landon Thome and stop at the original Aurelio's to bring back my wife her favorite pizza in the area. It was all worth it for us at Sox Machine to put in all this effort.
Think
Still.
about how much money you saved us with photos.
And videos, and yes, that's true. I
Yeah, you
have
did
so
not.
many photos.
Yeah, they were not. We you did not have to use tokens for our photo wire, nor buy any B-roll. You took care of all of that, so thank you.
You are very welcome. Well, it is something that, I wrote, Jim, the cases for and cases against to what James mentioned was the case against Roch Cholowsky is that he is not as polished offensively as we thought last December. But with James's reporting and what he heard from like White Sox personnel and the front office, Mike Shirley and Chris Getz about the adjustments that they want to make with Roch, you pay attention to the minor leagues every single day. And we don't know yet, podcast listeners, where Roch is going to be and when he will start his minor league career with the White Sox. But I feel like this is something that we will have to pay attention to is how is he doing when he is facing two strikes and how he is faring when he's facing much better pitching. If I had to guess, I'm sure it's with Winston-Salem and high A initially to start. Maybe you give him a little bit of a leash because he's joining a minor league team in August and we wait to see how he's really faring to start 2027. But at least we can all identify now what the White Sox are trying to work on with him. And that's far easier, in my opinion, to see on how he transitions from college to professional baseball, knowing what we're supposed to be looking at on the adjustments that they want him to make.
Yeah, I think there's enough noise or weirdness with college players like pro debuts to where you don't put a whole lot of stock in what he does if he goes to Winston-Salem for the rest of the year. I think I'd really be judging what he does after a full off season of work. I think he should be able to work with White Sox coaches over the winter, like even if there is a lockout, because I don't think he's subject to it, if I have that right. So, they should be able to, have some off-season consultation, and a normal winter in that regard, and then go to an affiliate in April, and that's probably when I'd start judging him. But yeah, no, um, yeah, I think the work that you did in terms of like comparing him versus Grady Emerson versus Von Lackey, like that's going to be valuable down the road, no matter what, just for you kind of the historic perspective as we evaluate this draft class, 2, 3, 5 years down the line of just what were people thinking at the time? How were these people seen at the time? And then, the fact that you said that, I don't know about his approach, like it might have to work on it. Then you have Mike Shirley and, Chris Getz saying like, yeah, he's got to work on it. Like, all right, at least I'm not crazy, or at least, they're not trying to sell something that I was seeing that were setting off my alarm. So I think everybody, even if you liked Emerson more for that particular pick, I think everybody can come away satisfied seeing the same thing and just having either a different confidence or just, they have maybe some internal confidence based on just what they know, in discussions amongst themselves, under the hood, et cetera, what they can do to go about it and all the conversations they had before the pick about how open he is to it.
Hey, Howard, I got hurt at work in the warehouse. My boss doesn't believe me.
Aiken Law has over 100 attorneys and staff ready to work for you. If you've been hurt on the job, in a car accident, or suffered a medical mistake, call 312-6-million.
Well, out of the 21 players selected, and we're writing recaps on all the picks that the White Sox have made on SoxMachine.com. So if you were busy this weekend with family vacations and you're just catching up, again, go to SoxMachine.com and read as far as our entire coverage of the MLB Draft. We also have other videos as well. I cut together, thanks to James, to get the interviews with Chris Getz and Roch Cholowsky, getting both of them to talk about the journey and how the White Sox and Roch Cholowsky ended up knowing that they were a great fit for both the White Sox and Cholowsky himself. You can check out that video again on youtube.com/SoxMachine. But out of all the players that were drafted and getting a chance to be in the Zoom conversations with Mike Shirley, James, which player or players are you intrigued in who the White Sox drafted over the weekend?
I am either cheating or being selfish. I am saying Weingartner because I've seen Weingartner. He was at Super 60 and he was like they a lot. It's all like seeing them collect measurables, and a lot of it is like, how important is this? Like, you watch like certainly like the extreme ends or the of the 60-yard dash. You kind of notice it a little bit, but like you watch like a bunch of guys like run 50 times like over and over again, or like or even try to rerun times to like try to bump it up to 55. You're like, what are we doing? Is this really? Or seen infield drills of guys who aren't going to stick where, or just watching them hit BP, and like it doesn't necessarily like you can see them like smoke the ball a bunch of times, but are you really like seeing how much their ability to move the barrel across the zone from coach pitching? So those are shortcomings, but through that, Weingartner was just like, well, look at that little freak move. Like that guy's super fast. He's one of like the fastest guys in the he's certainly in the dash, but just like you do hit like everything he was doing it like was like at higher speeds, and it was like kind of like he was gangling away where like you could see like projection in it, but also just made like the way he moved around like a little weird, just like weird looking. And so like he caught my eye. It didn't necessarily look like, oh, this guy's like super refined or like close or like polished or anything like while watching like Santarelli take BP or something like that. But it stood out in a way. Like it was an interesting project, and like the round it's at certainly is like in that realm of like I'm trying to think of the right name. Is it James Beard as the speedster?
Yeah.
I always worry like, am I just saying the cookbook?
Yeah,
Together, and then James
he was
Wood.
fourth round. Yeah.
Right. This is obviously a later round, but it feels like, what if you just got like a really toolsy fast guy, like someone who looks like a physical freak, kind of. You think of them more as like how to convert them, on the football field as like they return punts or something like that, or in basketball like they're all loose balls and hustles or something like that. They obviously have some confidence, and it's almost like I don't want to say Ryan Fuller is like Poochie, but like there's some in all the picks they like, especially any position player, it's the logical question you want to think like, well, what does Fuller think of this? And that was like an example of where Schiller pulled it out. Like they think they can do something with this hit tool, which is what the one thing that's kind of missing that makes everyone feel like this is a little scary prospect. They kind of have to be pretty high on him to have him be one of the four prep picks that they went for. But in terms of like where there's so much investment in the top of this draft, and obviously they spent a lot of value on the top of this draft for this to be kind of more of a interesting wild card that they played. I think Cameron Johnson's more the what
Yeah.
Shirley earlier referred to as their lottery ticket, but this is kind of maybe a more souped up version of that, of like this could be like a fun, even if like the hit tool doesn't come all the way around, this could be like an Acuna like presence on the roster where like if he's not being overstretched offensively for a long stretch of time, you'll watch him do stuff like steal second and pop up in one move and advance the third on a wild pitch and be like, it's pretty neat to have someone who can do that on the roster. That's going to come in handy in some time. Or someone who can absorb a 105-mile-an-hour line drive. Acuna looked awesome in the A series, like not like huge offensive ceiling awesome, but like, oh, this guy's physically very talented. I get why they weren't rushing out the door to part with this. Weingartner, watching him move around, you could get like kind of similar vibes of like, yeah, having someone who's super fast and twitchy could definitely prove useful in some form down the road.
How about you, Jim? Which players did the White Sox draft catch your or intrigues you the most?
Well, mentioning the Fuller connection, anytime anybody's taken from Connecticut, jumps out to me because Aaron Hill, Birmingham hitting coach, also from Connecticut. Mentioned that DePino came from Connecticut, like his territory, Ryan Fuller territory, and so 10th rounder Matthew Bucciero fits that bill. Although he struck out like 16 times in 26 plate appearances in the draft league, so like that's not necessarily huge things, but just I see Connecticut, I think like okay. Braden Holcomb, we saw him at Vanderbilt when I tagged along with you for that series against LSU, and he kind of reminded me of Avi Garcia a little bit, just in terms of huge guy, pretty good speed, doesn't look like the other players on the field, but I think just more swing and miss in the game. I think like a little bit more. The hit tool isn't what Avi had, so like that would be a big project I think for him in the 12th round. I think Volchko is like a good first pitcher taken in the 3rd round. I think he's pretty interesting from what I saw. But I think like it's kind of cheating to say Landon Thome in terms of how I'm interested, but I'm fascinated by this whole process that led to him. And it annoys me to see people saying it's destiny. It's like, it's not destiny. You traded the 30 to acquire the 34th pick. You worked for this. This is not something that just fell into your laps like you was in the 19th round. Like, oh, I guess this is what we want all along. No, it's you specifically traded a useful major league player to acquire Landon Thome. And just the way people are talking about it, and just like the mathematical odds are kind of being set aside right now. Because like Gonzalez, in his present state of being, yeah, I would say a useful major leaguer, whether he's a second division starter or more of a role player on the bench, kind of filling in different positions. Fascinated to see how he handles shortstop and Pittsburgh on a part-time role and just kind of rolling around, bouncing around between different positions. Really want to see what he does there, but he's basically like a median to good outcome for the 34th pick. He was taken in 15th, I think, overall, when he was taken. So like, that's a little bit disappointing, especially given how he started his pro career. But in the form he currently is, like, that's, for a 34th overall pick, that's pretty good that you're getting a useful major leaguer out of a 34th pick. That's kind of a median to good outcome. And they're taking that and saying, well, we're rolling it into Landon Thome. We're rolling it into a high school pick, even though we just saw the value of having Gonzalez as a reserve bat to fill in if Murakami goes down, or like if Colson Montgomery's back finally acts up too much, like Gonzalez could fit in there too. And they're taking that layer of protection away to roll into Thome, and just like everybody's cool with it. And it struck me as like,
And
this
you
is
are not.
well, I mean, like, it's just a lot of confidence to be putting into a high school pick, who's uh, in the competitive balance round, and perhaps he'll be well equipped to handle it because he's the son of a Hall of Famer, and that he just has that kind of exposure to the game and that polish and that just knowledge of how the gears of professional baseball work that we saw like Gavin Sheets, just in terms of how he had this kind of I think composure to him that I think served him well during a lot of bad times, and asked to do what he wasn't supposed to do. And he had this just kind of sense that he knew what he was supposed to be saying and doing and where he was supposed to be and what kind of like mindset he was supposed to be in at all times. And I could see Thome benefiting from the same thing, but it's like you're banking on Thome being better than Jacob Gonzalez when Jacob Gonzalez is an okay outcome. And it's a fascinating bet, I think. I don't necessarily have I guess I have a small problem with it, but I guess I have a problem with the way it's like the probabilities aren't necessarily being discussed in a way that it's a gut feel play, I think, a little bit, to feel like you can take what you had in Gonzalez and trade up and get somebody who's a better long-term fit and a more dynamic player. And he might be, but it's a considerable risk they're taking in doing so, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like we're going to trade Derek Hill, and then Everson Pereira has a concussion, and now it's Junior Perez, who still doesn't look like he's major league ready. We'll see how it pans out.
Pereira took batting practice this weekend.
Okay, that's good.
Both him and Hayes could go on rehab after the All-Star break. I think Hayes is a little bit ahead of Pereira, but like Hayes
Okay.
right after. But just since we brought him up, as much as Pereira immediately like Wile E. Coyote slamming into a wall, like after they made a trade banking on the idea that he'd be depth, feels like some sort of lesson in fate. It does seem like he's on his way back.
For me, with the way that things worked out at pick 41, Cole Prosack, the more that I've been watching as far as his showcases, and especially in how he excelled in those showcase games, reminds me of like a left-handed hitting version of Caleb Bonham. And I don't think he's going to be a catcher. I think from the Zoom calls that you had with Mike Shirley James that the plan is for him to be at second or third base. He's got a really strong throwing arm, but I was impressed by his left-handed swing. There's obviously no way that the White Sox could have gotten both Thome and Prosack if they did not make that trade with Pittsburgh. So I'm wondering if that's the way that the White Sox would have a retort to your analysis about trading with Pittsburgh, Jim, is If we didn't do that, then we would have just had Landon Thome at pick 41. So we like to have both Landon Thome and Cole Prosek looking at the long-term future for the White Sox rather than Jacob Gonzalez and Landon Thome. And I think time will tell whether or not if that decision-making was flawed. But I do like what I see from Prosek. I'm a bit surprised that he got to the White Sox at pick 41. Volcheko from Georgia. Just watch how he performed.
It's gonna be a battle for a few years on that.
Volchko.
It is. Yes, it is. Joey
Telling it
Volcheko.
off the top of my head has been tough so far.
It has. If you watch his performance against Texas, which is on YouTube, 15 strikeouts, 1 walk. Easy to fall in love with him. Watch his previous start against Mississippi State in super regionals, and you could see where the flaws would be coming. And again, I strongly recommend to read James's day 1 recap, because it seems that with these college pitchers the White Sox took, we're going to hear a lot from Brian Bannister, maybe in spring training, seam effect shifts as far as teaching these guys how to throw sinkers and these kick changes so they have a pitch that's not that can tail away from lefties. I think that's going to be pretty key. But I do like these college arms that they selected. They're betting on velocity, especially with Cameron Johnson. We'll see if he signs NIL money, defending champions with Oklahoma. I'm guessing he's going to sign with the White Sox as a junior. He could hit 99 miles an hour from the left side. The walk rate is astronomically high. So he is a project that the White Sox will have to work on as far as control. I'm thinking he's going to be more reliever, but there's so few lefties who throw that type of heat of 99 miles an hour that maybe the White Sox can get some type of value out of him in the upcoming draft.
I will say 17th rounder, Crew McChesney. Saw the name Crew. I thought he's from Utah, and he's from Utah.
There you go. Well done. Again, we'll have all the recaps as far as the MLB draft, and when they do sign, we get those signing bonuses. The White Sox can spend up to $21 million without any penalty as far as the overage when you take into consideration that 5% overage over their signing bonus pool. So we'll know sooner than later how much Roch's going to sign for, how much Landon Thome's going to sign for. We'll be reporting that on SoxMachine.com. But I hope you guys enjoyed all of our coverage for the 2026 MLB Draft. And now it's time for me to create copies of all of my Google Sheets and start working on the 2027 MLB Draft for the White Sox, which will be hosted in Chicago.